there. Welcome back to Streets and Eats. This is episode number 106. And we're getting up there. That's right. And this week we're going to be talking about Alsace and the route de vin, or the wine route in Alsace. And it is on the western side of France.
Eastern side of France. It's on the eastern side of France.
And we go there all the time. So we've just come back from our 18th time in Alsace, and we have lots to share with you, and enjoy. This week I have the trivia question, and it comes from a little experience that we had at a winery. But did you know that every type of wine has its own bottle?
Every type of wine or every region?
Every region of wine, like Burgundy, Alsace, Normandy, Languedoc, all of those ones. Did you know that?
I did not know that, although I have noticed the different shapes of the bottles. And I know in Germany, like if you go to the Franken area,
that's true,
they have a different shaped bottle.
But really, that's the only place in Germany that seems to be different. I didn't know bottles were such a big thing. Did you?
No. And I'm going to start paying attention now.
Me too. So the trivia question is, what happened in Alsace during World War I? It obviously has to do with bottles. And what did they do to solve the problem?
Well, I actually think I know this one because I was paying attention during one of our cave tours. And it all came about. The whole story came about from this one vintner that we went to in Marlenheim. That was Marlenheim. That was called Mosbach. And we went on the tour of their cave, inside where they keep all the barrels and the vats and the winemaking area.
Well, that's the cave, yeah.
Yeah. And they had a really old, dusty bottle of wine sitting up on a shelf, and we asked them about it. And so what we discovered was that during World War I, in that time when everything was like up in shambles and battles were going on and things were being blown up, the Alsatian bottles, apparently the manufacturing company was hit and they didn't have any Alsatian bottles. Well, of course, the grapes are still growing. And if you have someone there, probably the women, I guess, the men were all off at war, you're going to make wine. But
for a lot of different reasons.
So they had to make wine. They had to put them in something. So they just scrounged bottles from everywhere. And the one bottle that they have on the shelf was easily identifiable, apparently, as a Bordeaux bottle. And that was one of the ways that they were able to kind of help date that bottle, because they figured it had to come from that time frame. It's a cool story. And so did I answer the question?
I don't know. Did you? So what happened was during World War I, the bottles were destroyed. And so they didn't have their signature Alsatian bottles to use.
Right.
But even though the grapes were still growing and they were there to make money and to drink wine and to, whatever, they wanted to bottle it. They didn't want it to go to waste. So they had to scrounge. And so one batch of wine from any winery might have bottles from Burgundy, from Côte d'Aron, from all over.
Côte d'Ivoire.
And they wouldn't necessarily have Alsatian bottles, but they would be the exact same type of wine that was served during that one.
Same wine.
Batch.
Different bottle.
Yeah.
Same labels.
Anyway, that was the start of our trip this time. We, like I mentioned earlier, we definitely have been to Alsace a number of times. So many times, I can't even tell you.
Yeah, I can't count them.
And the reason is because it is just a gorgeous, gorgeous area. The people are super welcoming and friendly and helpful and proud of the area that they live in. We typically will go a couple times a year, sometimes in the fall, sometimes in the winter. Sometimes in the summer, but more so in the spring. I think this is our most popular.
Spring is the best time to go.
Our most popular time that we go. And it's just gorgeous because the grapes are having this spring, beautiful green.
The leaves are all out. There's little baby grapes if you look closely
They're
on all
so
the vines.
cute. They're so babies. And then there's roses, and there's poppies, and there's all kinds of wildflowers, and it's just stunningly gorgeous. And then it's still kind of like a little bit rainy, but what's cool about that is the rain comes in, but then there's beautiful light, and then the rain sort of washes everything. And I mean,
it comes and goes, and
it's just a good feeling. It's a good atmosphere.
Yeah, we've never been there where it was just a steady downpour nonstop, like we get. I'm sure they get other times of the year, but in May it's just like sudden downpours, and then the sky's clear and it's beautiful.
And we also haven't really been there during the snow.
No,
we have been there in the winter many times, and
Christmas
winter
markets
can be cold and kind of dreary and wet, still wet. But I've never really experienced snow there.
Yeah. And the Christmas markets are pretty magical in some of those villages along the Route de Vin, because the villages, there are so many of them along the route that are just small farming villages. They're there for the grapes. They're there for making wine. And they've been there for hundreds of years. In fact, the Mosbach domain that we went to on that first tasting, they go back 14 generations, 400 years, I think they could.
450 years, I think.
They could trace back to. So that's old. And so these villages are old. A lot of them were bypassed during the war or looted during the war, but not destroyed. And so there's these beautiful medieval villages just kind of dotted in little valleys all along the route. And it's just magical during wintertime when you get the Christmas markets and the roasting nuts and the glühwein smell. I don't think they call it glühwein there, but
actually, I would say that it's pretty magical all year long.
It really is.
One thing that is, it reminds me of Beauty and the Beast, Disney's Beauty and the Beast, because, you've got these colorful half-timbered houses, and I mean, you almost feel like singing as you're driving through or walking through, because people are saying, bonjour, 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 bonjour. I mean, we found out that you are pretty much expected to say bonjour or bonsoir when you are going to a restaurant, for example, or going to a bakery, or if you go into a shop, anywhere that you go.
You walk in and you bonjour.
You bonjour, because I think it's almost rude not to.
Yes.
And it definitely marks you as a tourist. Not that you're probably not marked anyway, but
counter at least, yeah.
Yeah, because they know who lives there and who doesn't. But at the same time, I just think that they're very friendly and they expect you to be friendly as well. And I appreciate that personally.
Yeah, I love it.
So we go a few times a year. We have our favorite places we go. And like anything, we kind of sometimes get in a rut. Not a bad rut. No. I mean, it's a good rut.
Going and tasting wine and having good food and just enjoying the beautiful scenery and the outstanding architecture and the friendliness of the people.
Yeah, I mean,
it's not a rut.
It's a rut. It's just not a bad rut.
But it's good to get out and explore and find that there is a lot more that's just as good, maybe even better.
So what we did this time that was a little different is we wanted to drive. We want to do a road trip for the entire Route de Vin, the entire wine route, Alsatian wine route. And we started up in Marlenheim and we finished down in Thann, kind of mixing things up in the middle. I think we've spent the most time in the middle of the Côte, of the area.
Yeah.
And I would say those are probably the most popular places in general for other people that visit there as well. But we did find some magical things outside of our regular purview of stuff that we've done.
Yeah, like you said, we've been down there so many times, and we've been on parts of the route, and we've driven pretty good lengths of it, but we never really set out to drive the entire thing. So that's what we did this weekend, and we had a great time. We did it over the course of really 2 days.
I would say
two full days of driving, but we did it over the course of 3 days. Actually, 4 days.
We took 4 days total.
But we were visiting friends, and we were spending time in Colmar. It wasn't all just the Route de Vin.
Yeah.
But the actual driving the route, and exploring the towns and villages, 2 to 3 days is really a
good amount of time.
Good amount of time.
So if I were going to that area of France, I would want to miss Strasbourg, which is right outside the route. And Colmar is quote unquote the capital or the center of the route. And a lot of people love Colmar. I've actually never stayed in Colmar. It's a city. I've been there umpteen times. Our daughter stayed there this past weekend and explored the city really in depth. We did a full day in Colmar. So if you add a full day in Colmar and a full day in Strasbourg, and I would say 3 days on the route, you want a minimum of 5 days to kind of do it
Alsace.
Right. But will you have done everything in that 5 days?
Oh, no
There's
way.
no way. Will you have gotten a really good taste of it? Absolutely. Will you have been addicted and want to come back over and over again? No question. It's very alluring. It's wonderful.
It gets in your blood for sure. That first sip of wine will do it.
It'll definitely do it. So how do you get there?
Well, we drive, of course.
We
try to drive everywhere. We do like public transportation. I think it's a great way to get around, especially in cities. So we'll drive to a city and we'll use public transportation in the city. But that's not really a good option to do the route divine. It is a route. It's a road. It's
170 kilometers long.
Something kilometers long. So the idea of doing that through public transportation would take a very long time. There are buses that run from city to city and village to village. I don't think that's a great way to do it.
Well, I mean, you could do if you had a plan and you knew the route schedule, you could probably go, okay, today I'm going to go to Egwisheim and I'm going to take the bus to Egwisheim. I'm going to get off at Egwisheim. I'm going to spend the day there and then I'm going to come back. You could do that.
And then tomorrow, another place. And you will drive through a lot of the villages because the buses are dropping and picking up people in the village near the center. So that's not a bad way to do it. It can be done that way, I think, but it's going to add a lot of time. And you don't have the option of swinging into a village that maybe the bus doesn't stop to and checking that out, or spending a little time in a village where the bus doesn't, where you don't want to get off. So really driving is the best bet. Obviously we live here. We have our own car. Driving is pretty easy. It's easy for us to say, oh, just drive. But, by the time you look at all the costs involved with public transportation and the time involved with public transportation, it's really not a bad idea to fly in somewhere nearby, like Strasbourg.
Strasbourg has smaller flights coming into it. You're not going to get a flight there from the United States. Right. But you might fly into, say, Orly and then do a transfer to Strasbourg or something like that. Or the same with Frankfurt.
Or fly into Frankfurt, fly into Charles de Gaulle or Orly, rent the car there and have it for maybe a longer trip if you have that time.
So renting a car is a really good way to do it.
The best bet.
I think what a lot of people like to do, and if you're an active person, this would be interesting for you as well, is there's a lot of people that do bike trips.
Definitely.
And you can do bike tours and sign up, and then they'll take care of you, or they'll provide the bike, and then they'll go from hut to hut kind of idea where you might be moving every night, or you might not. I mean, I don't know. I think there's various options. But you don't have to do the work. Someone else is doing it for you.
They'll move your bags for you. You just ride your bike or ride their bike.
And there's tons of bikers in the area. And it is a beautiful. There are hills. I mean, it's hilly, but I wouldn't say it's mountainous. So even though there are hills and some are a little bit steeper than others, for the most part, it's not that bad of
for sure
a terrain. The same thing goes with hiking. There are so many hikes you can do. We ran into a couple that was eating dinner at the same place we ate dinner the last night, and they were hiking from one end of someplace. They didn't start in Tann or in Marlenheim, so those are the bookends. But wherever they had started from, they had a route, and they were going for 20 some kilometers a day from here, seeing what's in the town, going to the next town, and then staying in that town. And I think they were spending a good week doing that. And so that's another option. You can walk them. The towns are pretty close together.
Usually 3 to 5, maybe 7 kilometers apart. so not really far apart. I would say about biking, if you haven't been on a bike in a while, then you may not want to do it as a biking tour. But if you bike regularly and you're comfortable on the bike, I think that's a really good option for sure. Those tours can be fantastic, and a lot of people really love biking in that area.
And
it's beautiful.
And there's one other kind of bus. There's called a bus that's kind of like a hop-on, hop-off bus. It's called the Kutzig, and it's a red bus, and half of it, the top comes off just like a hop-on, hop-off bus. And it does have like set itineraries, and it will allow you for, almost 40 euros a person for the day to go to maybe 2 or 3 or maybe even 4, depending on how quick you are.
Yeah, how much time you spend there.
Because they'll have a schedule, and then they'll drop you off, and then you can go here and here. But I think to really get your money's worth doing that, you might feel a bit rushed. Although the towns are small. So if you're a good hiker and you can walk it out, and you're not planning on having lunch there or whatever, then that might be a good option. And the other thing that might be a really good reason to do it is if you are planning on tasting those wines.
Yeah.
Because those wineries open at 9:00 in the morning, maybe some earlier, and you can taste all day long, all night long, and trust me, you do not want to drive on those.
Yeah. And that it is a really good option for that. And maybe like you could combine that with other ways of getting to the route. Take public transportation to one of the towns where the bus picks up, where the Kutzig picks up. And then from there, you can get to other towns and then back to where you're staying. So that's a great idea. And yeah, you don't have to worry about drinking wine and driving.
Yeah. You don't want to do that. So anyway, getting around is there are so many options. So I don't think that that's a problem. I do think the absolute best way is to rent a car.
Oh, for sure.
Unless you want to bike it, because biking, you can go almost as fast on a bike as you can to the cars anyway.
In some cases,
because those are some windy roads. But anyway, there's a lot to do. There's a lot of ways to do it. You can take day tours that'll take you to some things. You can take. I mean, of course, there's lots of different options there. Now, driving in France presents a few, especially in the Alsace region, presents a few things to pay attention to.
Yeah, but really it's pretty easy driving, especially on the route itself. You can't go more than 80 kilometers per hour. And usually you're going 30, 50, or 40 in the villages. There's, depending on the time of year, there could be a lot of traffic or there could be very little traffic. I
think 5:00 we found was pretty busy each day.
Yeah, for sure. No matter where we were. Those bikes that we talked about, those hikers that we talked about, a lot of times they're on bike trails and hiking trails, but sometimes they're on the road as well. So you definitely need to be aware of that and make sure you're sharing the road with everybody. Other things to worry about.
Well, I think that the roads, because like you said, these villages go back to medieval times. The roads were not built for the size of our cars. I saw a camper van coming through one of the arches, and I thought, is he going to make it? Is he going to make it? He did make it, but you could tell he didn't really. I mean, he wasn't really supposed to be there. Anyway, so the roads are windy. They're going up and down. They're going around, and they have one way to control the traffic flow on some of those narrower roads, where they have a sign that has a white arrow on one side and a red arrow on the other side. And those sides will change so that it makes it as equitable as possible throughout the town. So you will have the white arrow, which means you have the priority. And sometimes you will have the red arrow, which means you yield the priority to the person that's coming towards you. And it sounds a little bit harder than it really is.
But it's pretty intuitive.
Yeah, it's pretty intuitive. And you get used to it because you're not driving fast anyway. I mean, you're there to see it. And there is not one spot on the route that is not absolutely gorgeous.
Well, which is another reason to drive, because I don't know how many times we pulled off into a little track that went up into the vineyards and took pictures because it's just so stinking beautiful. Like, oh my God, you got to stop. You couldn't do that on a bus.
No.
Of course, you can definitely do it on a bike, but or
Yeah,
hiking.
I think the buses are really limiting. I think you can do it, and I think if there's no other way to do it, then that's an okay option.
But a
But
car gives you so
I think
many
the bike
options.
or the car is really the best way to do
And
it.
the other thing, sometimes there won't be those signs as you're driving through a village. They'll be parking on the street. And if people are parked in those parking spots, it effectively turns it into a one-lane road. And so, depending on which side the cars are parked, determines who actually has priority driving forward. So if they're parked on the left side and there's a car coming towards you, then they should stop and wait for you to get past the parked cars. And then you're expected to do the same thing if the cars are parked on the right. So that's definitely something to be aware of. You don't want to try and like make your way through thinking, oh no, we'll fit.
No, don't
Give
do
them the
that.
benefit of the doubt. And wait your
Well,
turn.
and everybody's pretty courteous on the roads.
Definitely in the
We didn't.
villages.
I think we ran into one impatient person, and that was actually in Colmar, which
Yeah,
is more of a
it's in the
city
city.
anyway. So I don't know if it really counts.
In the
but
city,
on
all
the-
bets are off.
Yeah, yeah. But for the most part, everybody was pretty courteous on the roads.
I would also say that our Google Maps worked pretty good for us. I would say it worked really good for us in the villages itself. Now, it does not have the route. Like, you can't say, hey, Google, I want to follow the route to Venn, and it will lead you from village to village to village.
No, but there are brown signs.
But there are brown signs. But if you're off exploring in a town, sometimes it can be a little challenging to get back to that point because of one-way roads, the twisting and the winding, and it may be difficult to get back to where the route is. And so you might lose the route. It's a really good idea to, and this is what we've
make one of your first stops or multiple stops.
Stop right away at an little I, we call them, tourist information office, and pick up a map, a free map. It's just the basics. It's got all the villages on the route. It's got the route marked out. The map we had was in red. And so you knew what the next village was. So even if you got
turned around, we did,
led astray by something that you wanted to look at, it's not a problem. You can just put it into Google Maps, like, okay, now I need to go to Bischofsheim. And get to Bischofsheim, you're going to find the route again and continue on your way.
That's very true. The one thing you need to keep in mind is most of the roads, most of the towns, you are not driving through the prettiest section of the town.
That's right.
So if you're going to do a road trip like we did, where you want to start at one end of it and try and experience as much of it as you can, then you have to know, you have to be aware that for some of the more, especially the more popular towns or the smaller towns, you probably will have to park outside the center, and there's plenty of parking. We've never had an issue parking.
Even the smallest village had a little parking area outside the center that would hold at least 20 or 30 cars.
And then you just walk in, and the walk is not long. I mean, it's literally through the arch, and there you are. There you have it. So it's just be aware that you're not going to do a road trip and see everything from your car. That's not the idea.
No.
This is a road trip where you're going to see a lot from your car and really have a good time driving. But at the same time, you're going to want to stop.
Parking and getting out and exploring. And you want to get out and explore. Having said that.
And there's also every single one of them you have to pay for. So you have to really pay attention. And some of them are a little bit more difficult than others to figure out the payment system. But there always is one. Like we had a heck of a time finding the payment machine. And we weren't the only ones.
Yeah.
Finding the coin operated payment machine for Eglisheim. But we did find it. It was there, and everybody was in the same boat, so it wasn't a problem.
Yeah, so another good tip for that is when you get your rental car, snap a picture of the license plate.
Absolutely.
And then pin it in your notes or somewhere where you always have really easy access to it. Because those payment machines require you to put in your license plate number. So have it at hand. You won't have to go running back to look at it and come back and type it in and look, make sure. Yeah, you don't want to be stuck in that position.
Exactly.
And also, all the payment cards that we went to, all the payment machines we went to, took change or credit card. And in every case, they both worked. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. Keep a bunch of change if you're not really comfortable using your credit card at something like that. But they're all like tap. So They're pretty secure.
And,
I
and the
didn't have a
same
problem with
thing if you're going a little further afield, like to Strasbourg or Colmar, or you happen to get on one of the autoroutes. They
right.
have a péage, they have a toll.
Toll roads.
So they worked just fine for both coins and for card.
Yeah,
every
we just
single
have
time.
we're just using our regular old Visa, United Visa Explorer card, I think it is.
Yeah, piece of cake.
Nothing special, not a European card.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so just to mention it again, there is not a bad time to go
No.
to Alsace. Like I said, we tend to go a lot of times in spring and fall, and I would say those are my favorite seasons because there's always something going on. But from the beginning of the year, you've got carnival, festivals and parades. You've got the cows going up into the field, parades, transhumance, they called it. I like the ones where they're coming down. I haven't really done so much where they're going up, but that's beside the point. Then you start getting into summer, and there's festival after festival. There's music festivals, and there's artist festivals, and there's food festivals. This past weekend, while we were there, I saw 3 different towns that had gastronomy walks. And this is kind of a new fad that's really gotten popular in Europe. And that is, you go to a start point, you buy a glass of wine, a glass for wine a lot of times, and you get like a ticket. And this costs money. They're all different amounts. And then you go on this designated path, and you stop at this little stop, and you get a bite to eat and taste this wine. And you go to the next one. I mean, they're kind of fun. Yeah. So, you can look out. So those are really popular, and they're happening right now. Then you get more into the summer, and there's more and more festivals. Come fall, you've got the harvest festivals. Our favorite festival in Alsace is called the fairytale, which is in Ribeauvillé. It's the Fiddler's Fest in September, the first weekend in September. We have a whole article on it, and I mean, it is.
That's the most stunning parade in the world, I think,
of all times.
It's just incredible. But
every year.
But we'll have a podcast about that, and you can read about it on our website. But definitely, if you're there in September, usually around Labor Day, or usually Labor Day, actually, that Sunday, you definitely want to be there and make plans early, because it's going to be hard to find any hotels last minute, and you need to really be in the town early that day because it fills up really quick.
Yeah. And you do have to pay for the parade. It's like €8 or something.
Just, yeah.
Well worth it. Well worth it.
Great
Even beforehand, you can see them getting ready. It's just...
It's hard not to talk about it now because we love it so much.
We love it.
But the other thing is just thinking about the scenery itself in the springtime. The flowers are everywhere. There are roses sprouting like weeds throughout that entire region. Plus all the other wildflowers and everything else. It is just stunningly beautiful with all that new spring green growth. In the fall, of course, you get all the fall colors.
And the grapes are just beautiful during that time.
Yeah. So,
and then of course you go into winter, and you've got the Christmas market. So there really is not a bad time to visit. Not at all. I mean, just if the only time you have is mid-February, maybe it's not the most exciting time along the Alsace, along the route to Vin, but the vintners are open, and they'll be happy to see you.
Yes.
And the people will be more than happy to see you. And the food is still good. And it's still,
I would say,
really, it doesn't matter.
Alsatian food. I would say Alsatian food, for me, is actually even better in the winter time, because it is very hearty, and it's just you want to eat that stuff in the wintertime. Anyway, so there are good reasons to go all year long, for sure.
Okay, so where do you want to go?
Do you want to drive?
Well, you can do a lot of different things. You can do it by visiting the things you're interested in. There are castles up and down the route. Mm-hmm. There, of course, are the vintners. I mean, there's literally thousands of them. Or just maybe you just want to wander around these beautiful towns, which I love doing that. Like to do. And there's good shopping. I mean, I'm telling you, the Alsatians have that whole kind of almost like a Danish hygge sort of vibe where they have their reds and their whites and their ginghams and their hearts and their and it just
Storks.
feels, and their storks, and it just feels so, I don't know what the word is, but you want to buy the stuff because it's cool.
It's so
it's
cool.
beautiful. Like we just bought a spoon holder with storks on it because it's just gorgeous. Why not?
Yeah.
So there's lots of good shopping. There's a lot of good places to buy artisanal foods and things like that. The bakeries and patisseries. I mean, I could spend, and I mean, I'm close to doing this all the time anyway. I could spend a whole weekend just going from bakery to bakery.
From boulangerie to boulangerie. And then in the afternoon, little patisserie to patisserie. Or pick up something in the morning at the boulangerie. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, so good.
A good bakery. Love it. There are some great bakeries in that region of France. I mean, there are everywhere.
Right.
But definitely along the route, we found some excellent, excellent bakeries.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there are so many towns along the route that you've got your handful of ones that everybody goes to.
Yes.
Everybody. And they go there for a good reason.
They're beautiful.
Ribeauvillé and Eguisheim and Riquewihr. I mean, they're beautiful.
They've got plenty of restaurants to choose from. They got plenty of hotels to stay in. They're ready for tourists. And they get the tourists at those places. So
and we do. And repeat
you
tourists.
should go to those places. And if you are especially not driving yourself, then those are pretty good bases because they have all the infrastructure.
But they're going to be the most touristy.
Yes.
I personally think that going another level down, and by down is not the right word because they certainly are lesser. Yeah. But there's Kaisersberg and our favorite Kienzheim. And then we stayed in Châtenois this last time. And I thought, oh my goodness, why haven't I stayed here before?
And we drove through so many beautiful little villages like Niedermorsheim. Yeah, Niedermorsheim. And Turkheim was a beautiful place.
And Bar. And
so many.
I mean, we can't even name them all.
Almost all have one or two small family-run hotels that are like perfect. They'll have a restaurant with excellent food. Yeah, that's a good way to do it. And then you just drive to the other places that you're going to visit because nothing's that far away.
And I think maybe ideally the best way to do it would be spend a couple of nights in this small town.
Yes.
Then move a little bit further down the line and spend a couple of nights in this one, because even though they're all somewhat similar, they're all gorgeous and friendly and have good food. They all have a little bit of their own personality too. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's really cool.
For sure.
And
that's kind of how we did it.
I think the difference you from going from the real top tier Eguisheims and Riquewirs to, like, say, Kienzheim, is that you have all the same amenities with just a tad bit fewer people to contend with. Right. Fewer people that are going to be, in your way.
In your way. In your photo.
In the lines to get your baguette in the morning.
Yeah. Or taking up the reservations at the restaurants.
Exactly.
Which a reservation is a good idea at the restaurants.
I'd say
it's mandatory. I
mean, we have lots of good recommendations for you, so you can look at our website as far as places to eat. And remember, we go off season. If you're going to go at a high tourist time, whether it's in the winter for the Christmas or right smack dab in the summer, I would highly suggest that you make reservations.
Plan early.
I would make reservations on a weekend anyway. Alsace is one of those places
for weekends, for sure,
that people come all the time, over and over again.
Yeah. One thing to keep in mind when you're thinking about when you're going is Mondays, a lot of things are closed. Sundays, most things are open, but some things will be closed on Sundays as well. But Mondays can be pretty hard to find something open.
So how do you pick a place to stay? I mean, while we're on the topic, right? Mm-hmm. I have a few thoughts about that. Our all-time, bar none, favorite place to stay is called the Hostellerie Schwendi, and it's in Kienzheim.
Kienzheim, Kientzheim. There's two very similar sounding names on the route.
That's right, but we like the one with the E in it. So we go to the hotel, and it's this labyrinthian,
Old medieval
half
house.
timber medieval house that, just looking at it from the outside,
Stunning.
I mean, it's
Beautiful.
stunning. I mean, like, that's a reason to go to the town by itself. But then you go in and it's so cozy, and then they have a spectacular restaurant.
Yes.
We have eaten there at least once a year, I mean, for the last 15 years.
Right.
We've
had to skip a year or two here and there because we weren't in the
area. COVID. But,
COVID.
But regardless, I mean, it is a standard.
Yeah, it is.
And
fabulous.
Then right next to it is one of the vintners that we'll visit. And in fact, there's probably 4 or 5 vintners right in that town. And so I guess my tip here is go there. But not just that. It's look for a place that either has a really good restaurant on site or within walking distance, because you're going to have wine with dinner. You don't want to drive back to your hotel afterwards. And you
don't want to have to deal with parking at either place. Once you parked at your hotel, you want to keep your car there for the night, for sure. Mm-hmm. So that's the other tip, making sure that if you're driving, of course, making sure the hotel does have parking, because otherwise it could be challenging to find parking in the smaller villages, in the smaller towns. So that's a really good tip. Checking the reviews is always a great idea. I tend to kind of stick with something that's a 4.6 or above on Google Maps. But then I'll not just look at the number, but then I'll go and read the most recent reviews and look for mentions for a hotel with a restaurant. I'll look for mentions for both the hotel and mentions for the restaurant itself and see what people are saying about both and what they're recommending to eat and that sort of thing. And you get a pretty good picture in your mind that way of a good place to stay.
And I would say don't get hung up on getting a hotel with breakfast. Right. Breakfast costs run the gamut. I think the cheapest we've seen it is about €9 per day, which actually is pretty good. That's because if you go to a patisserie, you're going to spend that much anyway.
Sure.
But I would say the majority of them are around 20 to 25 euros per day per person. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, you're never going to spend
absolutely ridiculous
on breakfast anywhere else.
Every town that I went to, I'm sure there's an exception or two.
I don't know if Kingsheim has a boulangerie.
I'm sure there's an exception or two, but almost every single town has a boulangerie that you can go and get a baguette, and you can get some croissants, and you can have a decent breakfast. A lot of them will have quiches. The breakfast ones that we like to go to, because we've only gotten, in the last many years, we've only had breakfast once, and this was actually the very last hotel we stayed in, and I would highly recommend it because the breakfast was amazing.
Was pretty good, and it was included in the price.
Yeah.
So when you find that, that's always a good choice.
So that was good, and it was a good breakfast. But we always look for something that has some savory in it, so probably some quiche or something. Mm-hmm. And we always look for seating. And that is a bit harder to find because the French tradition is just to get up in the morning, walk down and get your fresh bread and walk home, and then you have your coffee at home. So finding it with seating is a little bit harder, but if you have a car, it's not an issue whatsoever.
And again, when you're looking at Google Maps, check out the photos, look for pictures of seating, see if people are mentioning. What we found this time around was they would be calling them a tea room. And that's what they would call them in the boulangerie themselves. They would advertise, yes, we have a tea room. And so there's seating. And for the tourists like us, it's ideal. Like you said, you were sitting there enjoying our coffee and our quiche and our croissant or viennoiserie. And we're just watching the parade of locals coming in and getting their baguettes and heading home. So it's kind of fun too, actually.
And that brings me up to sparked the idea of what do you need to wear? What do you need to pack when you come to Alsace? Let me tell you, everywhere in Alsace, when the weather starts getting nice to them, not necessarily nice to you, they're going to be outside eating. And there will be tables and chairs almost everywhere for everything. But it may not be like super warm, and it might even be drizzling. So bring your raincoat, bring a couple of layers, In the mornings, you're going to be a little bit chilly. Probably in the evenings, you'll be a little bit chilly. During the day, you'll be like peeling layers off left and right. So you want to be prepared for a lot of different temperature changes throughout the day. And it's a wine growing region. It's going to be somewhat wet.
It's going to get rain.
I think it rained on us every day this past time, but only for, 15 or 20 minutes here. A little bit of drizzle there. It was certainly not something that stopped us from doing anything.
For sure. And I would also say for, like, a lot of people worry about going out to a French restaurant. How dressy do you have to be? This entire region, they are farmers for the most part. It's very casual. You can, if you want to get dressed up for dinner, for sure, get dressed up for dinner. But it's not a mandatory, unless you're going to a really fine dining place. But you're not going to find a lot of those.
We've been to Michelin star places and we've seen people in clogs and jeans.
Yeah,
you really,
right.
I'm not saying you should go in
clogs and jeans.
Or in sports shorts or something really, sort of.
But you
really
don't need
cash.
to worry about having a jacket or a dress. But if you want to, of course you can.
I think that's a very important note. I think we think that the Parisians are always so immaculately fashionable.
Right.
I would say they're immaculately put together, and will have a nice pair of slacks and like a sweater and stuff. But they're not. It's like Jim said. They're not getting dressed up specifically to go out to dinner necessarily.
Right.
There are exceptions to all of this.
You can if you want.
So, and the other thing is you're going to be walking a lot. And a lot of the times you're going to be walking on cobblestones. So you want to wear those heels? Go for it. I'm not going to wear heels. I would suggest you don't bring them.
Good walking shoes, I think, are a must for sure.
And if you're a family and you have kids, I saw a lot of strollers, but I'm telling you, I have pushed strollers on cobblestones before. It is not fun.
Yeah.
It really depends on you and what kind of stroller you have and how your kids react. But I think baby wearing is a good idea. Have the kids, be in a backpack or, just stop more often. And there were playgrounds pretty much everywhere too.
There were a lot of playgrounds, usually by the parking areas too. So you can park, the kids can get out and play in the playground a little bit before you wander through the town. And you can use that playground as a little bit of an incentive to keep them going into town. And then when you get back, a little playground time and back in the car. Yeah. It's a good way to do it.
Good stuff. Okay. So the last thing I think we'll just mention again is the food.
Mm-hmm.
I think, like Jim said, it's a very hearty type of food. The lightest thing you're going to have is also the most ubiquitous, and that's going to be a tarte flambée, or as we say in Germany, Flammkuchen.
Yeah.
But it's tarte flambée in French. And that is a very thin bread base, kind of like a pizza idea. And then on top of it, they'll have a creme fraiche, and then they'll have some onions. I don't think I've ever seen them without onions. Yeah, they might be some.
No matter what you have on it,
they're going to have onions.
Creme fraiche and onion in the base.
And they'll have, they'll have different toppings. They'll have mushrooms, and they'll have beef, or they'll have salmon, or they'll have foie gras sometimes. They have literally, depending on where you go, they'll have a minimum of probably 6 choices.
Yes.
So there's something for everyone.
My favorite is goat's cheese.
Yeah, mine too. So good. Yeah, we love the goat's cheese. And I would say that, like, we had one yesterday. Was that just yesterday?
It was.
We had one yesterday, and it was about this large. And it was kind of like our lunch, but it's more just really a snack to get us to dinner, right? Mm-hmm. And so we just shared it, and that was just fine. However, if we had wanted it for a meal, you would want your own.
For sure. That and a glass of white wine, pretty good meal.
A really good meal.
And quick. So that's something to think about. If you're going to go out for a meal in a French restaurant, the idea is that you're going to be there for some time.
A couple of hours.
So if you don't have that time, a place that sells Flammkuchen is your best bet.
Absolutely.
Some of them will have other like small fast food type foods that you can choose from as well. But if you're going to a restaurant, even if it has Flammkuchen, but if it's a restaurant with main dishes, a menu, that sort of thing, it's going to take time. Don't expect to go in and rush right back out after having a quick meal. In fact,
it's not the French way.
We frown upon that. And the French definitely frown upon that. Go in, have an aperitif, have an appetizer, have a main, have dessert, a glass of wine with the meal, a cup of coffee afterwards. The whole process often takes an hour and a half to 2 hours or
Easy,
more.
or more.
Depending on who you're with and how much you want to visit and talk and just have a good time. The idea is to just relax. And in fact, when you're in the area, you're going to notice that things close between 12 and 2:30. Not the restaurants, of course, but the businesses, because they're all gone to lunch for that two and a half
hour lunch.
So it is a thing, and expect that to happen. Don't expect to get in and out unless it is something that's like a Flammkuchen restaurant.
And I think that's really important because as Americans, we tend to go out to dinner and we're in and out. And if we're there an hour, we expect fast service. This is
slow down,
take a break.
Yeah.
And if you want that, go to, like Jim said, pizza or Flammkuchen or something. The kids love Flammkuchen. The other thing the kids love are the pretzels, the pretzel.
Which you can get everywhere.
Just like in Germany, pretzels are very, very, very popular. And they're in these elaborate windows where you can get them as a sandwich. You can get all different toppings on them. You can get sweet. You can get savory. It's a perfect bite to eat, especially for the kids, if you're not planning on eating much between, breakfast and dinner. Although, this is another French thing. I think the French are so good at doing fourmues, or what they would call menu à marché, a menu of the day. And that will always have a choice of one or two appetizers, one or two main dishes, and one or two desserts.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, because they know that people don't want dessert all the time anymore in this more weight conscious, health conscious type of world, that a lot of times they'll have a price just for the entree and the main, or the main and the dessert, or all three together. And like yesterday, Jim got the menu, and it was only 22 euros for an appetizer, a main dish, and a dessert. You cannot beat that. I just got
one main,
and it was 29 euros. So my one main costs more than his full menu.
Yeah. And you get just a good taste of a lot more of the different foods that way.
It's a good price. B, it's a good time of the day to relax and really take if you've been walking and going to this town in the morning, take a nice long break and have a good lunch, and then go to another town in the afternoon, and then you can go back and get into your hotel or whatever, relax a little bit, let the kids go to the playground, and then go out to dinner and have another couple of hours. But that's what Alsace is, at least to me. Yeah. And that is a lot of eating, a lot of communing, a lot of talking to people, and just really enjoying the atmosphere.
Yeah. The food itself, some different Alsatian food that we've had that we really like. The Biblikas was really good.
The Biblikas was good.
It's almost like a sour cream cheese
with some stuff in it
that you put on your fried potatoes. That's really good.
They usually serve it with Munster.
Oh yeah, I had the baklava, which is kind of like a stew with potatoes and different root vegetables and 3 different meats: pork, lamb, and beef.
I think the most popular, really though, is the choucroute. Yes. And the choucroute is a sauerkraut dish. That's what choucroute is. And then it comes with sausages, like smoked ham, that kind of thing. And it's usually pretty elaborate. And it's hearty. Yeah. Definitely hearty. And it's not a very American taste, I don't think. But it's pretty darn good, I gotta say.
For sure.
What are some other things? And then, I could talk all day about the different choices at the boulangerie patisserie. Did we say we like those?
Yes.
Of course the baguettes are amazing. The croissants, they have
incredible
filled croissants. They have almond and raspberry and pistachio, and they have plain croissants. They have pain au chocolat. They have, and then some of the more local varieties. There's a Kugelhof, which is a turban cake, which is basically got raisins in it, and it's so good with coffee. And
they'll make mini ones, so you can get one of those.
Yeah, you can get them all different sizes.
We mentioned quiche in the boulangeries. A lot of the boulangeries will have a quiche, either a quiche of the day, and you'll just get a slice of it, or the little mini quiches, like a quiche Lorraine or a quiche salmon, something like that, which one of those makes a really good meal for one person.
I'm trying to think. There's so many other kinds of foods. One of the big things is gingerbread.
Oh, yes. You can't leave Alsace without talking about or thinking about the gingerbread.
In French, it's pain d'épices, which is spice bread. And we went to Le Palais de Pain d'épices, which is in Gertville. And I would say if you have kids, you would want to do that. And if you don't have kids, you would want to do that.
With or without the kids.
We didn't have our kids with us. We did that. It was a lot of fun. And the store was amazing. And
you get to walk a little bit through the factory area. Not a whole lot, but a little bit.
And so you learn kind of the history of the gingerbread and how it came to Alsace and some stories that revolve around gingerbread and how it's made and the different varieties. And it was just really, really good.
Yeah.
And the gingerbread itself is really good. Our grandson, I think that some of their gingerbread is a bit spicy.
Spicy.
Like you can really taste it. Our gingerbread tends to be milder, I think. More sweet. And theirs is more maybe tangy. Like really, it's a little bit spicy, but it's good. Our 4-year-old grandson loves it. He does not want to go past a gingerbread store.
Of course, if there's any icing on it, the first thing he does is somehow magically hoover all the icing off the top, and then he'll eat the cookie itself or the cake itself.
But his eyes and ears perk up when you what? Gingerbread? Did I hear gingerbread? Yeah. So even though I think it's a little spicy, I think that the kids do really like it.
Yeah.
So that's another thing. Anyway, there's so much to do in Alsace. There's so much to do along the route, and we didn't really even get into the wines.
No.
That's going to have to be another podcast.
I guess so.
Because we have a lot to say about going wine tasting and how to do it and how to really enjoy it.
What kind of wines in the region.
Where to go.
That kind of thing.
So we'll do that later. But, I mean, it goes without saying that every single town has many choices for you to go and try out all the different wines of the region.
For sure. And you're going to just have a great time, whether you drive the whole route or you just visit a couple of towns on the route. It really doesn't matter. It's going to be like one of the vacations of your lifetime.
You're going to love it.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Streets and Eats. If you liked what you heard, please show us some love. Hit the like button and leave us a review. Maybe even subscribe so you don't miss any future podcasts. Also, we'd love it if you joined us on our Facebook private group, Streets and Eats, where we just have an ongoing conversation about all things travel. Ciao for now.